Right, so Keir Starmer is standing in the middle of his own polling collapse, pretending the ground hasn't already slipped, talking about loyalty while the Parliamentary Labour Party trades leadership chatter like it's office gossip. The numbers are dire. The favourability is stuck in the basement. More than half the country thinks he should resign. And yet Starmer still acts like the problem is disobedience rather than the charts in front of him. You can hear the strain in every denial. You can feel number 10 tightening every time another minister tries to distance themselves. The budget is coming. The local elections are coming after that. The party can see what those two collisions will do. The public, regardless of their personal politics, all have a reason to dislike Starmer for one reason or another and have already walked away. The PLP is only now admitting they might have to follow, though, but when so many of them are little more than Starmer clones themselves, that's not too much of a surprise. This isn't drama, it's just the natural end phase that was always coming sooner rather than later. Starmer is finished, not if, but when. But for Labour it makes no difference, because there's no saviour coming to rescue them, no matter when he goes. Right, so the Prime Minister is standing in the ruins of his own authority, pretending the ground underneath him hasn't already shifted, pretending the public haven't already turned, pretending the party hasn't already started gaming out the timetable of his exit. The coup chatter is not gossip anymore. It's the sound of a premiership losing structural integrity. It's the noise a political machine makes when the person at the centre stops holding its weight. You can hear it in the way the journalists have been chuntering on about it. You can hear it in the tone of the interviews. You can hear it in the tight language coming out of number 10. He talks about loyalty. He talks about discipline. He talks about fighting anyone who challenges him. He talks like a man who still thinks the title protects him. It doesn't. Totals don't stop a collapse. Numbers do. And his numbers are gone. The polling has been telling the story for months. The approval charts have flattened into a single downward line. The approval charts are buried. The unfavourable numbers keep rising. His net rating has crashed past the point where leaders normally start packing up already. Most of the country now thinks he should step down. The graphs tell the story before anyone else even opens their mouths. A Prime Minister not even 2 years into a landslide term, polling worse than Theresa May in her end phase and Boris Johnson in his scandal phase. You don't get numbers like that by accident. You get them when a public stops listening. You get them when a leader stops connecting, if Starmer ever did to begin with. You get them when a government loses the plot so completely it cannot say what it stands for beyond a handful of worn-out talking points. The Parliamentary Labour Party has been following those numbers like a weather chart. They know what comes next. They know a bad budget is coming because the pre-briefings have already been softening the ground. Global headwinds, inherited problems, fiscal realities, tough decisions, that bloody line again. Every one of those phrases is a sandbag placed in front of a breach. The Treasury knows the budget is going to hit badly. Number 10 knows the budget is going to hit badly. The markets will feel the tremor, the press will smell the weakness, the public will see and no doubt feel the inevitable squeeze. And the MPs will have to stand in front of the cameras and tell their constituents that everything is fine, while the numbers behind them say the complete opposite. You can see the timing already forming. MPs don't move on principle, especially this bunch of pre-approved Starmeroids. They move on survival. They move when the threat becomes personal. They move when they know they cannot win an election standing next to the same leader who is dragging their seats into danger. Things are already bad, but a bad budget will accelerate that countdown. The local elections deliver the verdict too. They aren't too far away either. They look set to be historically bad for Labour. Councillors fall, activists stay at home, voters stay cold, and MPs look at the results and see their futures printed in black and white. That's when a party starts to fracture. That's when backbenchers start to write statements and apply pressure. That's when shadow ministers start making calls. That's when the men in grey suits start whispering about unity for the cameras and removal for the whip's office. Starmer can feel some of this. He assumes, assuming he feels at all. He cannot admit it though, but he can feel it. You see it in the way he is denied via his spocks of attacking his own cabinet. You see it in the way he swears he will fight anybody who challenges him. It's not the tone of a leader in control. That's the tone of a leader trying to appear in control, because the alternative would expose the truth. Starmer doesn't deal in that, does he? Power doesn't need to be declared. Power is either there or it isn't. The moment you need to say you'll fight, is the moment everyone knows you've already lost the fight. The language comes late to the party. The denial comes late. The defiance comes late. It always all comes late. Inside the party, you can feel the fear moving in short bursts, though. MPs who defended him 6 months ago no longer raise their voices to do so. MPs who liked his message 6 months ago on social media now talk about drift instead. MPs who backed him because he was safe now talk about danger. The discipline is fraying, the tone is shifting. It starts in private groups, it moves in corridor whispers, it moves into briefing rooms, it moves to the lobby, and then it appears on the front pages. This is how a coup atmosphere hardens. It doesn't arrive in a moment, it accumulates gradually, it stacks up, becomes the new normal. And in the middle of this, you get the name Wes Streeting floating around like some kind of predetermined answer to a question, frankly, nobody asked sincerely. A question nobody in their right mind wants the answer to as anything except perhaps, is he going to go too? The press love him because he fills a gap, because he's good at talking. He's ambitious enough to take the oxygen. He's visible enough to be recognisable, sharp enough to brief against, hungry enough to talk to the right journalists about stuff. But ambition is not the same as support. Visibility is not the same as legitimacy. The truth is he's detested across the Labour spectrum, not because of his ideology, because of his personality, because of his manner, because of the way he steps forward when the cameras are on and sideways when the blame gets handed out. The left hates him for his NHS stance. The soft left hate him for his opportunism. The right hate him for his ambition. The rest just don't trust him. He's the archetype of the politician produced by the same machine that produced Starmer, a manager in a suit, a triangulator and a soundbite, a profile without a base. A guy who has never worked a proper job in his life because politics and his own ambition for power has been everything to him. Streeting is useful in one way, though. His existence proves the hollowness of the Labour Party today. The fact that he's the first name journalists reach for tells you everything about the quality of the front bench now. A party that purged its own left. A party that sidelined the soft left. A party that elevated loyalty over talent. A party that selected MPs for obedience rather than political instincts. Of course, there's no successor. Starmer engineered it that way. He didn't want rivals. He didn't want a bench of leaders. He wanted a bunch of pliant deputies. A hierarchy that pointed inward rather than outward. A structure that could only operate with him at the centre. When the centre collapses, the structure collapses with it, though. But then some, particularly amongst journalists who raise another name repeatedly, that being Andy Burnham, the media fantasy candidate, invoked whenever journalists need a character who looks and sounds like a politician rather than a spreadsheet. The public like him, the journalists like him, the PLP, they don't. The rulebook doesn't either, the hierarchy doesn't. Burnham cannot run without being an MP. That requires a seat, therefore a by-election, an NEC approval, and a compliant constituency Labour Party, and a Parliamentary Labour Party willing to allow a popular, these days outsider, back into their house. They won't, they never do. They want loyalty, they want predictability. That's why one is floated as a fantasy and the other as a threat, Burnham versus Streeting, if you like. All of this sits on top of a deeper problem, though. Starmer didn't just centralise power. He didn't just purge opponents. He didn't just set narrow boundaries. He didn't just pick MPs for steadiness that were cast in his shadow, if you like. He hollowed the party out. He turned it into a management board, a place where decisions are signed off, not made, a place where politics is treated like admin, a place where the only people who rise are those who pose no risk to the leader. And when you do that for long enough, when you build a whole government on that foundation, you end up with a cabinet full of people the public cannot name, a PLP full of people who cannot lead, and a government with no ideological centre, no emotional connection, no strategic spine, no capacity to respond to crisis beyond saying the words responsible and grown up. The next test is that budget that's coming up. Everyone knows it. The government knows it too. You can feel the preemptive framing already. You can feel the Treasury softening us all up before the blow. Rachel Reeves is getting her excuses in early. When a government is confident, it sells a budget as an opportunity, doesn't it? But when a government is weak, it sells it as necessity. Starmer's government is very much buried deep in the necessity phase. Warning people about difficulty, preparing people for anger, bracing for numbers. When a leader prepares the ground this heavily, they know the impact will be severe. And if the impact is severe, Starmer will look to Reeves. No Prime Minister lets a bad budget sit without a shield, and Starmer never takes responsibility for anything. He never says sorry for a single thing. No Prime Minister walks into pressure without a fall person, especially not one like Starmer. Reeves might be loyal, but loyalty does not protect you when the leader steps back and the party steps forward. He might well sack her. He might not. The pressure will push him towards it, certainly. The logic will no doubt push him towards it. The politics will push him towards it. It won't save him. Makes no difference, actually. It will only confirm what the country already sees. And then the local elections will come afterwards in May. For me, that's when I think the knives will actually come. A bad budget wounds you. Bad local elections, well, they're going to finish you. Councillors fall, constituencies shift, volunteers go silent, doorstep anger gets louder, the charts, those numbers, they drop again. And the PLP will read those results like death notices. They talk in coded terms. They talk about unity. They talk about discipline. They talk about renewal. They talk about a need for a review. But everyone knows what the words actually mean. Everyone knows what comes next. When your councillors lose, your MPs panic. And when your MPs panic, your leader falls. Through all this, Starmer keeps talking about loyalty, though. He's supposed to be running the country, but every time loyalty comes up, it should serve as a reminder that it's run for his sake, his Labour Party, as he keeps reminding us. Keeps talking about order, keeps talking about responsibility, keeps talking as if the problem is disobedience rather than the collapse of his leadership. Leaders always do this when the end starts forming behind them. They think the problem is morale. They think the problem is messaging. They think the problem is factions. But the problem is the numbers. It's always the numbers. And he no longer has any. This is what a slow-motion political implosion looks like. A leader who cannot read the room. A party that cannot find a successor. A cabinet that cannot carry weight. A project that cannot generate trust. A government that cannot turn the tide. And it is incapable of that. A public that cannot connect with the message because the messenger is lousy and nobody likes him and nobody likes what he has to say. And you can watch the damage stack up in real time, poll after poll, leak after leak, briefing after briefing. Each piece might be small on its own, but they're all part of a larger structure that no longer holds together. Sure, Starmer can delay the timing, but he can't delay the direction. The budget will harden the suspicion. The elections next year will harden the verdict. The PLP will shift. They always shift when the public withdraws consent. The collapse is never sudden, it's procedural, it's mechanical, it builds up. It is the machine doing what it does when the centre stops holding together. Starmer is finished, but as in all things in his political career, he can't see it coming and will determinedly limp on at all of our expense for as long as he possibly can. His eventual replacement, though, is guaranteed to be absolutely no better. So while we all brace for that budget to force us to tighten our belts once again, though, Starmer has decided to blow £1 billion on an all-new nuclear-capable asset just to please Donald Trump. Maybe Donny will give him some attention if he throws more of our money at him for something we really do not need, when we're already saddled with the expense of Trident and are set to be hammered in another budget. So get all the details of that story here. Please do also hit like, share and subscribe if you haven't done so already, of course, and if not, why not? So as to ensure you don't miss out on all new daily content, as well as spreading the word and helping to support the channel at the same time, which really is very much appreciated, holding power to account for ordinary working class people, and I will hopefully catch you on the next one. Cheers, folks.